Hey everyone, Chili B here again. Today we're checking out the latest newsletter the team's put out about the Community Lizard Contributors System. We'll start from the top. The link to the newsletter will be in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. And we're just going to start from the top. So this initiative that the newsletter is about facilitating a system where community members can more meaningfully contribute to the DAO, particularly in the areas of community events and whitelists and collaborations and stuff. And Kmal mentions that he mentioned this in the prior newsletter. If we jump to the spreadsheet where I'm just keeping track of all the news announcements and stuff, we can see at the October newsletter, he first mentions that the team thinks of Ethlizards as three main pillars. So that's the product pillar, the financial pillar, and the community pillar. And one thing they acknowledged was that they were too hyper-focused on the product pillar, and they've been ignoring the community pillar. So to rectify that, they said that they would develop a system to formalize structures to help the community vibe revive and to facilitate ways for the community to contribute. And he mentions that sometime in October there would be a process for people to apply to be part of this system. So back to the newsletter, it's now about mid-October and they're already delivering on that, which is again a great sign. They've been delivering consistently throughout and they still haven't stopped. So the newsletter is basically about this Community Lizard contributor system. And in my interpretation, I'm really taking this from a cultural perspective, and I'll explain that as I go along. I'm not sure if the team is thinking about it in this way, but I think it's super influential for the Ethlizards culture that this stuff is happening. So let's dive into the details and I'll explain on the way. Firstly, to their definitions, just so we understand what they're saying properly. A lizard contributor is any member of the DAO that contributes to the protocol. A core contributor is basically the team. An honorary lizard contributor is not a role with official duties or expectations, but it's kind of a way to recognize members that are more actively contributing to the DAO or members interested in more actively contributing to the DAO. And it's mostly linked with access to the Lizard Contributors channel. And the Lizard Contributors channel is explained as a channel for work in progress conversations where members who are interested in becoming more active or are more active can throw around ideas between the community and the mods and the team and get stuff going. I'm not sure if this channel is actually up and active yet. I can't see it myself, but it sounds like a type of channel that I'd love to be involved in. So I'm going to see if I can get in there when it's up and running. So this community contribution system is basically centered around two main roles, the librarian lizards and the liaison lizards. And they say the idea is to start with a small number of librarian lizards and liaison lizards, set up a good system, and then onboard more people that might be interested in those particular roles. And the hope is they would be able to scale up these roles as much as is demanded. If we flick back to the October newsletter, about halfway down, Kmal shared an organizational structure, which included these new changes. So if you can see in this community section, there's liaison lizards, there's librarian lizards, which we've talked about, and there's also alpha lizards, which are actually postponed, and we'll get to that in a sec. But this is just to put the changes in perspective of wider changes that are happening in Ethlizards. So back to the latest update, librarian lizards will oversee and manage this community managed document, which will cover DAO progress, investments, collabs, events, all other sorts of important information. And initially it's going to be on a Notion document, but eventually they want to integrate it into the website. And there's no financial compensation for this role, although librarian lizards are eligible to participate in a lizard contributor rewards program, which we'll get onto soon. The first two members that will pilot this program are Seagolem and Entity, and as mentioned before, their hope is that they'll be able to establish some systems and be able to ramp up more librarian lizards as needed. The librarian role might seem a little bit random right now, but as Ethlizards grows and the history of Ethlizards and the decisions that have been made become more complicated, it becomes harder to understand why past decisions were made, and it becomes hard to collate and find all the information that's gone into past decisions. And I think a lot of people might not care about past decisions, but understanding of past decisions is really important to being able to move forward in a good way. And as I said before, I think that largely comes down to an understanding and a preservation of culture. So right now, Ethlizards is small, and I think we've got a really good culture. But as Ethlizards grows, it's going to be harder and harder to maintain that culture. The culture will change, of course, but the essence of the Ethlizards culture, I think we want to preserve for as long as possible and as authentically as possible. And the way that people have done that in the past, and maybe the only way that it's able to be done, is by writing down and preserving history, as boring as it sounds. And different communities and stuff preserve it in different written forms. Like if you think about any big community, they're always centered around some sort of central text that guides and shapes their culture. So if you think about countries, they all have constitutions and laws. If you think about religions, they always have a sacred text that they turn to. If you think about massive multinational companies, they have bylaws and their vision statement and things like that. And if Ethlizards is going to grow to a massive size, but still be able to preserve some of the best parts of the current culture, it needs to write it down, and it needs people to curate it and take care of that history. To some extent, I think we got here by luck. Like, we had the right people join with good attitudes. We've got an amazing team. The bear market's come and it's shaken out a lot of holders that didn't really believe in the ethos or in the vision of Ethlizards. And what we have now is a pretty strong community in the bottom of a bear market. But I don't think we can rely on luck to bring us out of the bear market with a good community and grow and take off from that point. It really takes intentional planning and structures and things like the librarian lizards to make that happen. So this is a really interesting insight into the team's thinking. Well, I think it is anyway. Right now we're small. We don't have a particular need for librarian lizards because the community is small enough to kind of just naturally absorb and hold on to the culture and history that we've got right now. But the team's already setting it up with priority. And I think that tells us two things. The team has its goals set on Ethlizards becoming big, because if it's only ever going to stay small, we don't need this librarian lizard structure. And the second thing it tells us is that the team and the advisors behind the team really know what it takes to grow big and to be sustainable and to be healthy. So that's my interpretation and reading into this librarian lizards change. It really excites me, and I think that it's a really good move by the team, and it gives me a lot of trust and confidence in them. Of course, I could be overreading it. I don't know what's in the team's mind, but this is to me a very good signal. Moving on to the liaison lizards. They're a group of community members that are going to handle anything and everything community related. So they'd be like support, that's Twitter raids, whitelists, collaborations. And again, these guys will not be financially compensated for the role, but they have the eligibility to participate in the Lizard Contributor Rewards Program. We'll get to that in a sec. And their main areas of focus are going to be community support, community events, whitelists, focus partnerships, and collabs with other projects. So all really key parts of a healthy community within Ethlizards, and then expanding that community out as well. And scrolling down here, they've got a example workflow of how a collab or a partnership might happen. So the first step, the project fills out a collab partnership request form, which is probably going to be built into the website if we go off previous newsletter updates. Step 2, due diligence is done and review on credibility, background, etc. If it's approved, this is where the liaison lizards step in. The liaison lizards will track the progress and activity in Notion, and they'll be reporting on all the partnerships and potential collaborations. And number 5, the team will help to oversee the major events and collaborations. So again, I think this is fundamentally about culture. Maybe it's just how my brain's wired, but it looks like the liaison lizards are the ones that will provide the concrete structures and pathways for Ethlizards to come together as a community, both within the community and outside of the community as well. And another little insight maybe into what the team's thinking is, if we have a look at this workflow, I think this implies again that the team is expecting this to be big. If we've only got a handful of projects going on at any given time, I can't imagine the need for a whole team to be looking after the collaborations with these projects. But if we've got a whole bunch of projects working with us at any given time, maybe 10, maybe 20, you definitely need a team to run that. So that immediately makes me think that the team is thinking more towards that 10 or 20 mark as opposed to 1 or 2 projects at a time, which is a way bigger scale than I was initially expecting. So again, this makes me really excited, and I take it as another really good sign. I'm going to skip this section for a minute and just go over to the alpha lizards, which are down the bottom. In the additional information section, they say there's some hesitations around possibly alpha being considered financial advice. So they're taking it a bit more slowly with this. For the moment, they don't have the resources to properly manage it, and so they're just going to put it off for now. So no alpha lizards coming in the near future, it seems. But there is one change to the alpha repository channel, and that is it's going back to read-only mode. So that's a return to how it was previously, as opposed to how it is now, where you can post whatever you want. It's going to return to a select number of people being able to post really clear alpha posts in a particular format. So that's all there is to say about alpha for the moment. Coming back up to the Lizard Contributor Rewards Program. This sounds like a pretty exciting idea. So they say the DAO isn't in a financial position to hire extra paid core contributors at the time, which is totally understandable, but they still want to reward Lizard contributors that use their time and skills to support the DAO. So the idea of the contributor rewards program is that a portion of the freebies that the DAO gets, like whitelists or NFTs or any other type of reward, is set aside for active Lizard contributors. And this is all a work in progress. It's not finalized or anything, but they're trying to balance the rewards of being a Lizard holder and a Lizard contributor, presumably so that it makes sense to do either or. You wouldn't want the rewards for being a contributor to be so heavily weighted that everyone in Ethlizards basically has to be a contributor to gain anything out of it. And you wouldn't want the rewards for being a contributor to be so small that no one wants to do it. So I think they're trying to strike that balance with this rewards pool. Also, there's an idea for bounties, an early stage idea, they say. When the DAO can financially do it, maybe implement some sort of bounty system for particular work that the DAO would find really useful at that point in time. So it'd be like a bug bounty system, but for all sorts of things. And then this is where it gets to you, which is really interesting. So as mentioned above, there's already a few members of Ethlizards that have already been selected to take on some roles, but that doesn't mean that there's no role for anyone else. And in fact, the role of these early contributors is to help build out the system so that they can include even more DAO members as active Lizard contributors, especially as the DAO grows bigger or as the project grows bigger and there's more demand and more need for these roles. And they mentioned right from the start, all Lizard contributors will go through an interview process to help match the person to the given role, and the best candidate with the most appropriate skills will be selected for the roles. There's a 3-month probationary period, and there might be additional requirements depending on the specific role you're going for. But if you're interested in a Lizard contributor role, there's a link to the application form in the article, and I'll also copy it into my video description as well. They also mentioned that there's a few situations where someone might need to resign or might need to be forcibly removed as well. So I'm not part of this Lizard contributor system thing at all. It sounds really interesting to me, so I'll most likely apply. But just speaking from my recent experience starting to do these Ethlizards videos, it's scary to try it, but everyone in the community is actually really supportive and really keen for you to succeed in whatever you're doing. So if you've been thinking about it in the past, or if you're interested in this stuff, maybe this is the thing to tip you over into trying it. Give it a shot. Wrapping up with their final thoughts, they say that they can see there's tons of valuable members in the community, and they just want to make a way for these individuals to contribute to the good of the DAO, and even to become eligible for rewards for helping out the DAO. It's important to note that this is an experimental pilot program. I take that to mean any part of this could change at any time, or the whole thing could be shut down. But the initiative is they say aiming to provide a viable solution to DAO member requests to be further involved with the DAO. So it seems like a lot of members of the DAO want to help out and want to contribute in some way, they just don't know how to. So the team is creating structures and pathways for us to do that. And they finish off saying the success of this program not only depends on the program structure, but also in the strength and execution of the DAO members stepping into these roles. That's them saying it's not all on them. The team themselves can't force this to be a success. It really depends on the community stepping in. And I think that's 100% right. But also I think this community is great, and I think the community will step up, and I think this will be a success because of the strength of the individual members that we've got in this DAO. So that's it for their latest update, just a short one. They're implementing library lizards, liaison lizards, alpha lizards are postponed, and there's some prototype of a rewards program in the making. But if you're keen to help out the DAO in some way, if that's been in your mind for a little while, this is probably a good time to jump in. If you like these updates, give me a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And